What's going on, my beautiful people? This is Certified Life and Relationship Coach, Coach Court. In today's video, we're going to talk about five signs that it's time to walk away from an avoidant. When you're in a relationship with an avoidant, it can feel like you're constantly reaching for someone who's just out of reach. And while relationships always take work, there comes a time when you have to assess whether staying in a relationship is healthy for you. And here are five signs it's time to walk away from an avoidant partner. And the first one is they refuse to communicate. So I see this really often. They put the dismissive part in dismissive avoidant. So I'm not saying that if they do one of these things, it's time to walk away, because you can navigate things. You can actually resolve issues. There are avoidants who become more communicative over time when they learn to be more mindful about what they're doing, and when they start to care more about you and they feel like losing this relationship is valuable. This valuable relationship is something that they don't want to do. So this is in tandem with the other 4 or 5 things that I'm going to mention here. If you were really struggling with communication, and I said in one of my videos, for anxious attachers, communication is like breathing. It's almost like you're suffocated if you don't get to communicate what's on your mind or how you're feeling, or even addressing an issue that will be beneficial to address to help the relationship progress in a healthier manner. It's almost like you're being suffocated. Even sharing something about attachment style theory is tough, because once, let's say, an anxious attacher, I see this really heavy with fearful avoidance, because fearful avoidance for me tend to be the most spiritual and ones that dive deeply into personal development type content like this. So when they're trying to dive into things like attachment style theory, they want to share these things with the dismissive avoidant. And I get that pretty often too. How should I share this attachment style theory content with the avoidant? And most of the time, I say about 95% of the time, you don't, because if they're not ready to hear it, if they're not ready to have these conversations about attachment style theory, about their own childhood issues and what they consider as non-issues, then that's when you start to get this, what John Gottman talk about, stonewall. He has this theory called the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and he says if these 4 things continue to happen consistently in a relationship, the relationship will end. And he's done a study with, I think, a bunch of married couples. The relationship would end with a 99% accuracy, and those things are stonewalling, criticism, defensiveness, and contempt. Contempt being the worst. But if you have someone who's constantly stonewalling, they can't communicate, then a relationship, the air, the oxygen, like I said before, gets choked off and you can't progress. So that may be one of the bigger signs it's time to move on if they don't get to that point. So you have to ask yourself, are you the only one trying to resolve these issues? Or are they willing to grow like you're willing to grow? If not, then it's time that you should be letting this relationship go. All right, so number 2 is you feel like you're always chasing them. Whenever I think about someone chasing, I think of like movies. I'm a movie buff. And you think of the difference between pursuing someone and chasing. If you think about the movies when someone's like on a pursuit, trying to follow someone, it's a very light, just kind of follow behind them. Just kind of be incognito to follow them where they're going, which means they know I know you're behind me, but it doesn't feel forceful and it doesn't feel intrusive. But when you start to chase, like when that person gets into a dead out sprint, then you're in a very dangerous zone here, because I see this so often when someone gets, ignored. Let's say that you're texting the person, if it's an avoidant, and then they ignore it. And you continue to follow up with further messages. I say, look, don't send more than 2 or 3 messages, cut it completely off, and then just say, all right, I'm just going to let this, it's like a volleyball match. I'm going to hit it over, or ping pong, hit it over, let them hit it back over. Because if you continue to just bombard them with messages and bombard them with shots, then they'll start to feel like, all right, I'm in danger here. I'm in danger emotionally. I don't feel as if this person is right. I don't feel as they're centered. So if you feel like you're chasing them, where you're always the one wanting to hang out, you're always the one to text them first, then I would say put a halt on this and consider, possibly cutting them off completely. The third one is they're unwilling to compromise. And that kind of goes on what I just said. Compromise, adaptability, or are they willing to meet you where you're at? So if you voice a concern with them, and this happens pretty often, you voice a concern with them and they make that temporary change. They make that change just enough to get you back comfortable and to give you some type of a hope that this may be a permanent change. But over time, those bad habits and the things that you complained about start to rear its ugly little head again. So you have to ask, is this going to be something that I can do more than 2 times? So if you voice a complaint and it's early on in a relationship, or voice a concern couple years into the couple months, let me think about what's a reasonable time to give someone to make the necessary changes to meet you where you're at or to fulfill your needs. What do you think is a healthy time frame? Because this is a big change. If we're talking about communication, compromise, and meeting you in the middle, and what I have here is healthy relationships require give and take, but avoidants often resist compromise because they fear losing control or becoming too vulnerable. Without compromise, the relationship becomes one-sided. If their avoidance is leaving you feeling unheard, it may be time to prioritize your well-being. And the fourth one is you're losing yourself in the relationship. Another sign that it's time to leave the relationship. And if you're someone that's an anxious attacher, this is pretty common. This is basically the whole reason why the relationships don't work out, is because if you're anxious, preoccupied, you want to engulf your partner, you want to know everything about them, you want to do all of their hobbies with them. You want to just be who they need you to be. But that's the exact reason why you're going to form more resentment for them, and they're going to look at this relationship as if they're getting smothered and engulfed by you and doing too much. And the last one here is they show no desire to change. Now, I try to be optimistic. I try to be, fluent in my thinking. And I try not to be so rigid. And hopefully you guys are getting that from this channel. I try not to be rigid. So whenever you're entering into a relationship like this, it's encouraging for me to hear that, hey, they're willing to do therapy. They are willing to read a book like Attached, or one I recommend to a lot of my couples, which is Wired for Love. It's by Stan Tatkin. If they're willing to do things like that, it gives me hope that they do have this key piece that people need in relationships, which is adaptability. Because if they're willing to switch things up and let's see, that's, for me, that's meeting you in the middle, at least. But I have seen a lot of avoidants make that commitment to be adaptable, to make change, and then they pull back. It's almost like they have an expiration date for when they can continue to be uncomfortable doing things that doesn't align with what they truly want to do. So those are the 5 things I have for you. They refuse to communicate. You feel like you're always chasing them. They're unwilling to compromise. You're losing yourself in a relationship. And the last one is they show no desire to change. Appreciate you. And if you found this video of any value, please like, comment, and share. You can reach out to me on my other social media accounts. Instagram is I am Coach Court. Facebook is Coach Court. YouTube is Coach Court. And always remember, when you go be loved, you'll never have to find it. Namaste.